Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. Today is January 16th, the day of reckoning. Tucker, a Dodger, Bichette, a Met, and more. Let's talk about it. Hello, everybody. My name is Steven. This is the middle of the order. How are we doing today, ladies and gentlemen? The offseason has officially started. Yup, the big names are coming off the board. It started with Bregman, and it is carried over into an absolutely crazy week, which in tune is setting up an even crazier last couple of months here into the spring training of it all. This month is going to kick off, and it kind of already has. Before we get into the news, let's just talk about how crazy this week was in terms of the timeline order, because I am doing this in most important to least important in terms of the bigger names of the offseason that we've been waiting to sign this whole time. We start with Ranger Suarez going to Boston. And again, we're just kind of doing a quick debrief of the week, because that to me was hilarious, because Boston immediately pivoted from Bregman to Ranger, which in my mind doesn't make sense because Boston already has so much pitching and they still have this hole in the infield now. I can only assume that Boston is now looking out for a trade where they can trade one or two of their pitchers to get in a great third baseman from a bottom feeder team. That's where I'm assuming the whole Boston thing is going to end up going, which in its right is one thing. Then with Bregman also being signed, you get off to the Diamondbacks, who were looking for a third baseman. As I mentioned, Suarez is kind of the only proper third baseman on the market at this point. They go and they make a deal with the Cardinals to grab Nolan Arenado, which again, we'll be talking about. All this week, we're talking about Kyle Tucker, waiting for Kyle Tucker. Bichette has his meeting with the Phillies on Monday. It goes very well. For the whole week, we're kind of assuming that the Phillies will land Bo. Big surprise, Kyle Tucker doesn't signs with the team everyone thought he should have signed with, the Dodgers. The Mets being the second, place team not running, I guess. They immediately pivot and they sign Bichette maybe an hour and a half ago from where I'm recording this. So a lot of a crazy week just happened, a lot of pivoting. Let's get into it. The big news that comes out of baseball is Kyle Tucker, of course, signing with the Los Angeles Dodgers, the two-time back-to-back World Series champions. I said two-time. They've won it more, but they are back-to-back World Series champions. It's a 4-year deal worth $240 million. That is an AAV of $60 million for Kyle Tucker. The deal includes $30 million in deferrals. It has a $64 million signing bonus, 10 of which will be deferred. So you have a $54 million that he'll get right off the bat, and then that time will go afterwards. And there are opt-outs in this deal after the second and third season. So Kyle Tucker will definitely be a Dodger for this year as well as 2027. If there is a 2027, God knows at this point, there probably won't be. The Mets, they were another team in this, as well as the Blue Jays also in on Bichette, lose out on both of them again. Nothing new, no surprises there. The Mets, they came in at 4 years, $220. So they got outbid by the Dodgers by $20 million. Their contract was also more front-loaded without any deferrals, a higher signing bonus of $75 million. So they were 20 mil short on the AAV, so about 40 mil short overall, and then had the 10 million, 11 million, if you want to be technical, extra signing bonus. But again, more front loaded than the Dodgers, who are backloaded heavy, who have deferrals heavy. I mean, the way the Dodgers have played this, there's going to be a year where the Dodgers are paying more players who aren't playing with the Dodgers than they are paying their current active team. But I don't think they care because they have the money to spend, and that is part of the whole problem. That's part of why the lockout next year is more than likely going to be happening. It's just they can't keep doing it, and everyone's like, oh, they do this, and any team could do this. Yes. By definition standards, the Dodgers are playing by the rules. They're doing exactly what they're allowed to do. There are, not incentives, like blockage, I guess. There's not the right word. I can't come up with off the top of my mind right now. But there are things that stop the Dodgers, that usually stop these teams from being juggernauts, like extra tax, increased percentage on this, blah, blah, blah on this. Like, there are things. The Dodgers are paying a lot of money, and they're doing a lot of sending away draft picks even. Think about it. They signed Edwin Diaz, now Kyle Tucker. Both of them had qualifying offers attached to them. They're probably lost, plenty of their draft picks here to sign Tucker and Diaz, who are top free agents. They probably lost, 3-4 picks now, going to either the Mets and the Cubs now. And yeah, I mean, listen, Kyle Tucker, great ball player. $60 million AAV? Not that good. Of course, Kyle Tucker did win the World Series with the Houston Astros back in 2022. He is a 4-time All-Star with a Gold Glove and 2 Silver Sluggers. Of course, he broke out on the scene during COVID. He had his big kind of breakout season there. Of course, only 58 games, so no one really knew if it was a breakout or if it was just, 2 months of great playing. But then 2021, he kind of cemented himself. He didn't become an all-star, but he had a .917 OPS. His second half in 2021 was absolutely insane. 5.3 WAR that year. And then from 2022 on, he has been an all-star. He was an all-star with the Astros from 2022 to 2024. And then, of course, they traded him to the Cubs in 2025, which is where he had an all-star, won a Silver Slugger that year with the Cubs. Had an amazing first half with Chicago, but then, had an issues. He was starting to slump crazy, and no one knew why. Turns out he had some fractures on his hands and then got hurt late in the season. So his slump and injuries definitely dropped him off in the second half here. You look at his numbers overall through his career since 2018 with the Astros, 8 years between the Astros and the Cubs. He has 27.3 WAR. He's played in 769 games, 748 hits. He has 147 home runs, a career batting average of 273, a career OPS of 865. These are solid numbers. And yes, he is the prized possession of the offseason. But again, think back to the last couple of years and the last couple of prized possessions. Aaron Judge back in 2022. Shohei, 2023. I think I may have got my years wrong. I'm not sure. Soto in 2024. Like, it's this, I might have got my years wrong, but like Judge, Ohtani, Soto, you think of those guys, you can think of them getting the bag. Kyle Tucker, prized possession or not, like he was the number one free agent going into the offseason. This is, in my mind, a complete overpay for the Dodgers, which, again, they didn't need to do this. Like, let's be honest. The Dodgers are back-to-back World Series. They have Ohtani. They have Betts. They have Freeman. They have Smith. They have Muncy. They have Hernandez. Like, they have a phenomenal team. They didn't need to spend all this money on Kyle Tucker, but they chose to do it because they like to win. And who doesn't like to win? That's the whole point. That's why we play the games. That's why people were like, oh, end the season already, Dodgers going to win. The Blue Jays took the Dodgers to Game 7. They took them to half an inch away at the plate. They took them to an inch over the glove of Pages in the outfield. Like, the Blue Jays narrowly lost the World Series this year. You're going to play these games. The teams in the NL, they are all going to be hungry to defeat the Dodgers. Who knows what happens injury-wise to the Dodgers? Like, the Dodgers can spend all this money, grab all these players, everything that they want to do here. You still got to go out and play the games. This, this season, we've seen miraculous things happen. The Dodgers, even last year, with this super team that they had, didn't have a great season. Of course, they were more just mentally preparing for the postseason because they assumed they were going to get there, because of course they would. And they wanted everyone healthy, and that's what they had, and that's why they, had such a great team, and that's why they got through the Reds and Brewers like that. Was able to handle themselves, and then took down the Blue Jays. So, yeah, I think for the Dodgers' sake, it wasn't necessary. And also, because I mentioned even the paying with the tax and everything, the Dodgers' payroll for this year already is above 304. They're taxed at 110%, which means the Dodgers, for Kyle Tucker making 60 mil, this year, deferrals, whatever, but like the AAV of 60, the Dodgers are basically spending an extra 60 plus mil to sign Kyle Tucker. This is essentially Kyle Tucker for the Dodgers is costing him $120 million this year. Why? You did not need to do this. And by the way, the Tucker 60 mil AAV, the Marlins payroll currently sits at $65 million this year. So the Marlins payroll, the whole organization costs them just slightly more than the Dodgers' one player. And of course, if you want to go and nitpick on Ohtani, of course, Ohtani still costs more, and all these other players still cost more. And I mean, you look at the Fangraphs payroll for the Dodgers. It is insane. The estimated payroll right now sits at $429 million. They are becoming the Yankees of like the 2000 era. By anyone who hits free agency that walks, they're getting a bag from the Dodgers. And by the way, Tarek Skubal is, his arbitration is going to be coming up. Where does that land? Because I'm telling you right now, it almost already feels like Tarek Skubal is going to be pitching for the Dodgers next season, if there is a next season. Like after this year, and maybe even this year already, the Tigers might want to deal Skubal. He's already a Dodger in my mind. That's already what's happened. Because the Dodgers can do this, because it's not even like, oh, the Dodgers are just a team that spends money. They are also a good run organization. They have great facilities there. Players want to go there. LA is beautiful. Like, there is incentive besides the money for these players to go to LA. So when you have all these great benefits, and then they say, oh, by the way, we're also prepared to pay you 40 plus mil a year, how do you say no to that? Like, it's next to mil impossible. If the Dodgers call, you will answer. They will tell you the number. You will say yes. That is how this is being run right now, which is why, the lockout and all this other stuff, it's going to be happening. For Tucker, hey, get your bag. 4 years, $240 million. We talked about the Dodgers and Mets being around 4 years, higher AAV. The Blue Jays being in on it for less AAV but a longer contract. Tucker says, I'll just get my bag here, 4 years. With the opt-outs, he's able to opt out before his age 31 and age 32 season. So he can have two or three great seasons with the Dodgers, up his value even more than it already was, and then opt out and maybe get a longer term contract somewhere else that's paying just slightly under the value that the Dodgers will have. Like, I don't know how that will work out. In all honesty, he probably won't opt out, because how do you walk away from so much money unless he really hates it there or something horrendous? Like, who knows? But regardless, Kyle Tucker, he is a Dodger. For the Dodgers, hey, it's what you guys do. You're happy, obviously, even though you're paying so much money for these players. For Kyle Tucker, you got your bag, so you're happy. For baseball, you're miserable. You hate this. Most fans do not like this. I don't really care. I do believe that, if a team really wanted to, they could go out and spend this money. Again, the Dodgers, you would think, are the most, they're the richest team in baseball. They aren't. They aren't even the richest team in baseball. Obviously, they're a top 5 team, I think even third, in terms of how much the team is actually worth ownership-wise and everything. So there are 2 teams ahead of them that could do this if they really wanted to. They choose not to. And I'm not saying, oh, how come the Rays and the Marlins aren't trying to throw $250 at Kyle Tucker? No, obviously they don't have that kind of money. There is a certain threshold that some teams are able to get to, unlike other teams. But yeah, I mean, we could go into this forever talking about the Dodgers and how they quote unquote ruin baseball. And again, a team like the Yankees, because they have done nothing all off season, they lost out on Soto. If they really wanted to, they could have gone out and put in some money and got Kyle Tucker if they really wanted to. Clearly, they didn't really want to. A team like Boston could also have done that. The Cubs, they had Tucker. They go to Bregman. Like I'm sure they're happy. They're content with that decision making process there. But again, the Dodgers, the lockout is going to happen. It's probably in part to what the Dodgers are going to be doing here. This season, I think, is going to be very interesting. And I know people are going to be like, oh, well, the Dodgers are just going to win already. And that might happen. The Dodgers might be the first team to three-peat since the 98 to 2000 Yankees. But again, if there is no baseball in 2017, in 2027, I'm going to embrace every single game this season because who knows when it's the last. So that's my take there with Kyle Tucker and the Dodgers and their quote-unquote ruining baseball. This morning, let's get into another big news. Bo Bichette. He is signing with the New York Mets. It is a 3-year deal. $126 million is a 42 AAV. There are opt-outs after both the first and second year, which include a $5 million buyout for Bichette if he decides to take either of the opt-outs. This hurts. This one hurts for me specifically as a Blue Jays fan. I've gone to Jays games, so many Jays games these past couple of years. I've seen Bo Bichette in over 100 games live. I've seen him have plenty of big moments for these Blue Jays and for the organization. And, the guy that's on my jersey, I had a phone case of him. It's definitely hard to be saying, oh, he is not going to be playing Toronto Blue Jays baseball in 2026 here. It's kind of something that I did expect to happen, especially when the Blue Jays went out to sign Okamoto. It felt unlikely that Bichette was going to re-sign, and then they have the meeting with Philly, and they become the instant front runners, and all of a sudden it was like, yeah, like the entire offseason I was kind of saying Bo is gone, especially after Christmas and like into January here. It just felt unlikely for the Blue Jays to retain him. Obviously they were in the picture and there were conversations and everything. It just wasn't meant to be, I guess. For the Mets, it's a little bit crazy, but also I think it's the good kind of crazy if you're the Mets, because you went from losing out on Tucker to, 12 hours later, 13 hours later, signing Bo Bichette, who were favored by your rivals in the NL East. So I think it's the greatest kind of crazy you can be if you are the Mets. The Phillies became the favorites on Monday, as I mentioned. They were in line to give Bo 7 years at $200 million. That was what Bo had asked for. That was what the Phillies were going to give him, and they thought they were going to sign him. And then Mets swoop in last second. They're like, hey, we just lost out on Tucker. I know it's kind of crazy, but why don't you come here for $42 million a year and we can go beat the Phillies? And Bo said, absolutely. So yeah, it's a little bit of NL East drama there between the Phillies and Mets. I'm sure Phillies fans have instantly become to hate Bo Bichette now after they thought they were going to sign him, and all of a sudden now they have to play against him for division rivals. It's really funny, but again, as a Jays fan, it sucks in general. I'm not mad. It is just a painful loss, one of the most painful losses that I've ever had to deal with. I've had great players walk away from an organization before, but as part of the game, all fans go through it, no matter which team you're on and a part of. Most of the time it happens. Bo Bichette, he debuted with the Jays in 2019. I was lucky enough to see him the first time ever that year. And across 7 years, all with Toronto, 21 WAR, over 900 hits, over 100 and 11 home runs with the Jays, a 294 batting average, and an 806 OPS. The two-time All-Star, he's absolutely brilliant with runners in scoring position. He hits for contact. He's got the power in him. He's a situational hitter. He knows when to shorten up his swing, to just try to put the ball in play, score some runs. And yeah, he's a phenomenal ball player. The Mets are lucky to have him as someone who has watched him so many times in person. Again, it is just very hard to discuss this aspect of it because, as a Jays fan, how great the offseason has been with Cease and Okamoto and Tyler Rogers and all these great things, it is still hard to see like the Bo Bichette walk away, and for the Mets, it's hard for them to see the Pete Alonso walk away. And like there are certain players that just like, it's hard to imagine them on a different team, and then you get to a point in the offseason where it's like, well, it's official, they're on another team, and it's just like, wow. Like, again, I kind of already told myself so many times Bo Bichette won't be re-signing with the Blue Jays, and yet seeing the news still, like, breaks. Like, it's still just absolutely heartbreaking. It is, a new type of grief that Blue Jays fans like myself will be dealing with, throughout the rest of the offseason and into spring training, seeing him in the Mets jersey officially for the first time at his press conference, which will come up, seeing him back in the Rogers Center. Believe me, I'm planning on going to those Mets games, but it's difficult to deal with. And, again, for the Mets, I say it as a difficult type of crazy, or a different type of crazy and a fun type of crazy. To stray away from the sad Blue Jays side of it, let's talk about the happy Mets side of it. It's a little weird for the Mets, again, to jump from Tucker to Bo, who was supposedly signing with Philly. It's great. But again, they traded away Nimmo for Simeon, right, who you assume was going to play second base. You have Lindor at short. They signed Polanco, who you assumed would play first base. And this entire time, Mark Vientos and Brett Baty are like, okay, well, now we have to fight for third base. Bo Bichette comes in the picture now, and all of a sudden it's like, okay, well, the Mets love the infield, which was supposed to be Jeff McNeil, Brett Baty, Mark Vientos, and Francisco Lindor. The whole offseason, once Pete Alonso signed, they said like, oh yeah, we're happy with that four. And then you bring in Polanco, you trade away McNeil. It's like, okay, so that's the 1-for-1 there, but now you have Simeon because you traded away Nimmo. And now if you're Brett Baty and you're Mark Vientos, you're wondering, where the hell are we playing in 2026? Like, are one of us going to the outfield, or are we DHing? One's obviously left-handed, one's obviously right-handed. So are we platooning per matchup, or one of us getting traded? Like, there are questions there. The report is that Bo Bichette will play third base, which again threw me for a loop seeing that report, because it's like, Bo Bichette's been a shortstop his entire career. He, got to play a little bit of second base into the postseason here. Because obviously Jimenez with the defense and Bo's banged up knee when he was playing in the World Series. His little bit of taste there. We've never seen Bo at third base, and to be honest with you, his defense at short, was never on par with like the Gold Glove caliber. Pushing him to the farthest side of the diamond. He's got a strong arm. I don't know if it's the third baseman type of strong that we're seeing. You can't put Simeon there. I don't think Lindor is going to go there. So if you're the Mets, I think it's, you've kind of maybe created a position pile up here with massive contracts that, like, you can't just dump one of these guys off and trade them away again. So I think there is a little bit of a question mark there, which is also interesting for the player opt-outs that Bo Bichette has, because if the third baseman stuff really doesn't work, like, will he opt out and maybe go to Philly or somewhere else? Like, it is interesting to see that from the Bo Bichette perspective of it. But yeah, Philly, the 7 years, $200 million, they lose out. I'm sure they're stinging. And this is what we've been kind of waiting for to happen. This big episode, like, this is probably going to be an hour-long episode as I'm recording this now. We've kept saying we're just waiting for one domino to fall. The Alex Bregman domino falls, Red Sox pivot, okay. Now it's like, okay, now that we're not in the third baseman anymore, like it really is just Tucker, Bichette, maybe a little bit of Bellinger. So now another domino follows, and then the next domino follows, and then players are getting traded, and things are really going to start happening from this point forward. Ranger Suarez is gone. Now the top pitcher is Framber Valdez. The top hitter now is Corey Bellinger. Like all eyes are on Bellinger. He's probably going to be signing this weekend if we really think about it. Like how many suitors are in on Bellinger now that Tucker is a Dodger and Bichette is a Met? Like will the Mets still be able to go after Bellinger? Because it was basically the last report I heard about Bellinger was Mets versus Yankees. But, I mean, is that still a play now that Bo Bichette's a Met? Like, obviously, the outfield could still use some work for the Mets, but I don't know. So, yeah, New York Mets, they acquire Bo Bichette, and he walks away from Toronto after 748 games with the team. Again, yeah. Actually, let's move on because there's a lot of stuff to talk about, and, yeah, it's still interesting and difficult. To say the least. The Red Sox, I mentioned them. They were kind of the first big news of the week here. They went out to sign Ranger Suarez after losing out on Bregman. They were so confident that they were going to end up with Alex Bregman that, 2 days later, they ended up with a 5-year, $130 million deal with Ranger Suarez with a mutual option for 2031. If both of them like each other, they might stick around for that 6th year. Suarez, 8 years with Philly. So I'm sure Philly fans, this has been a tough week, losing out on Suarez. You're seeing him walk away to the AL East, and then being told that you're probably going to get Bichette, and now he's a Met. It's been a tough week for Phillies fans out there as well. Suarez, he's had a bit of an up and down career. His ERA usually likes to sit around the 3.40 mark. In 2024, his first and only All-Star appearance there, he finished 12-8 that year with a 3.46 ERA. Last year, a 3.2 ERA. In 2023, a 4.18. His games started 26, 27, 22. So he'll miss a couple starts here and there. He'll usually have a little, tightness somewhere at some point in the season. But what really sticks out with Ranger Suarez and why you maybe don't care is because of his postseason numbers. That's what you really want when it comes to certain players sometimes. You want them to have that postseason pedigree. His regular season numbers, yeah, they're good. They'll get you by. He'll be there. But his postseason numbers have been insane. You look at his career in the postseason with Philly. He has a 4-1 record. He has 11 games, 8 of which were starts. In 42 2/3 innings, he's given up 7 earned runs, only 3 home runs with 44 strikeouts. He has a 1.48 postseason ERA. That's what you want if you are Boston. He's now joining a rotation that, if I'm being honest, is overcrowded as hell. The Red Sox have one of the most complicated rotation problems right now. Obviously, these kinds of problems are good to have because at least you have so much depth. They could have 2 different rotations though. Of course, Garrett Crochet is your one there. They, of course, traded for Sonny Gray and Johan Oviedo earlier in the offseason. Sonny Gray was one of the first moves to happen this offseason, it feels like. Oviedo comes over from the Pittsburgh Pirates. Now you have Ranger Suarez, who will either slot in as the 2 or 3 with Sonny Gray. So I find that could be interesting. You're basically, if you're Ranger versus Sonny Gray, you're basically battling for who gets to be the second man in the rotation there after Crochet. But what Fangraphs has as the rotation is Crochet, Suarez, Gray, Brian Bayo, and then Johan Oviedo. That is the starting 5 that they have projected. If you look at their injured, though, they have Cutter Crawford, Tanner Hyuk, Patrick Sandoval, all guys who are major league great pitchers who all, went down with injuries at some point last year, year before, whatever. Those 3 guys, if any of them come back healthy, what do? You go into their farm system. Remember, towards the end of the season, they were starting guys that no one ever heard of. These are guys that, hey, pitched well. Peyton Tolley, Connor Connelly early, Kyle Harrison. He was part of the Rafael Devers trade. He was supposed to be the big, one of the big prizes of the Rafael Devers trade when you think about it. So you've got essentially 11 starters. As a whole, you've got 5 that you are going to start. You're going to have 3 that I can barely talk. I'm so excited. You have 3 that are in the farm system, 3 that are hurt. But it's like, again, Patrick Sandoval, his whole injury came down. That was like June of 2024 almost. So like it's been a while since we've seen Patrick Sandoval. They trade for Oviedo. They trade for Gray. I honestly think they could trade away like one of those the younger starters like a Peyton Tolley, maybe flip a Kyle Harrison to go and get a more a position player and a guy that can help them offensively. Go and get an infielder, because that's kind of the hole that Boston has right now. I think they have that ability to do so. So what Ranger Suarez does, it gets them a lot more depth. It gets them an arm for the postseason if they can get there. That has done it before with Philly, who knows how to work through the postseason jitters, and that's sometimes a big thing for some teams. And I mean, it is a crazy pivot for them. I thought, my first initial reaction when I saw the news was like, wow, that's how you pivot. Like you pivot from Bregman to Suarez. And again, I like Ranger Suarez. I think he's the top, one of the top starters in the game right now. But as I mentioned, Boston didn't have a starting pitcher hole. Like they just added more depth there. I feel like as a whole, they have infield problems. Like I'm not as confident in the Red Sox infield as I am in their rotation, let's say. Yes, they have Trevor Story. Yes, they have some of the young kids there, and Marcelo Mayer, etc. But there was room for improvement there, especially if you want to compete with the likes of the Blue Jays, Baltimore, the Yankees. So there are still questions there for Boston. I think they still need to do. They're 2 or 3 moves away, to really be top tier contenders. There's obviously still plenty of players in the free agency. And again, as I said, there are players who are being shopped around, could be traded. That's definitely a route that Boston can take as well with all of these pitchers now. But Ranger Suarez ends up with Boston. I thought this was going to be like the big talking point of the Friday episode. Boy, was I wrong. Enter Kyle Tucker and Bo Bichette of all players. But yeah, that is the Boston Red Sox side of all of this here. I mentioned that there was some other big news that came out in terms of third baseman camp. Nolan Arenado. The Cardinals continue their dumpster fire sell, kind of like the Twins. And it's funny because I kind of view the Twins and Cardinals as like the same team in terms of like the AL versus NL like comparison of like the Central. So I find that pretty funny. But Nolan Arenado, he is traded to the Arizona Diamondbacks. And to be honest with you, I love this move for Arizona. I love it for Nolan Arenado. I think he's going to look so good in their uniform. I think he's going to fit the team aspect of it. And I think he's going to be able to kind of figure his stuff out, getting back into the NL West. This is where he's been for most of his career as a member of the Colorado Rockies. Putting him back in the NL West, I think is going to do good for him. People are a little bit skeptical because of the year that he had last year. Last year with the Cardinals, his fifth and final year with the Cardinals, was the worst year of Arenado's career, his entire 13-year career. And last year was by far the worst, really since 2022, where he was an all-star, finished third in MVP voting, by the way, had a Gold Glove and Silver Slugger that year. He's been trajectorying down ever since. 2023, he still made an all-star appearance, but his OPS was 100 points worse. In 2024, his OPS dropped another 60. Last year, it dropped another 50, 60 points here. Career lows in WAR. Career lows in hits, excluding COVID. A career low in home runs. He had 12 home runs. He had 10 in 2023, his rookie year. His OPS 666, the worst of his career by far. His rookie year, he had a 706 OPS. That's a 40-point difference between his first ever year and his most recent year with the Cardinals. Definitely an awful year, but again, the Cardinals weren't that great of a team. He was dealing with injuries. He played 107 games. That's the least amount of games he's ever played in a season. And that's the question. Is it, hey, one bad outlier over a potential future Hall of Famer? Or is it the start of the end for Nolan? Again, he's going to be 35 this year, a 13-year career. He's been around. He's done his thing. And I will say this. He still has one of the best gloves at third base. Even at 35 years old, I would still take Arenado as one of the premium, defenders at third base. He's an 8-time All-Star, 10-time Gold Glove winner with 6 Platinum Gloves. And again, I said he played in 13 seasons. He's only missed out on the Gold Glove in 3 years of his career. And to go along with that, he has 5 Silver Sluggers. He slots in nicely at third base. You got Pavin Smith at first, Ketel Marte at short, Geraldo Perdomo at short. I love that left side of the infield, Perdomo and Arenado there for Arizona. Now you don't have to go out and sign Suarez back. You get Nolan Arenado. I love the move. I genuinely love the move. The Diamondbacks sent over Jack Martinez for Nolan Arenado. There's some weird stuff with his contract in terms of who's paying it. Again, Nolan Arenado did have the no trade clause, so he had to manually approve the trade himself, which he did do, which is why we're talking about it, and which is why he is a Diamondback. I'm not exactly sure how much. I tried to look at, I found it, and then I lost it, and I forgot about it. There is some workaround with his contract over how much the Diamondbacks are sending to St. Louis to cover the deal, but St. Louis is also retaining a part of the contract. I believe the Diamondbacks are paying $30 million of his contract remaining between the 2 years. Of course, he is a free agent after 2027, so he's owed $27 million this year and $15 million next year. His contract was more front-loaded when he signed that 9-year deal with the Rockies. Of course, it's even weirder because I think the Rockies are somehow still involved paying off an aspect of his contract. So, grain of salt there with who owes what money, but it's Jack Martinez plus some cash from the Diamondbacks in exchange for Nolan Arenado from the Cardinals. That's the deal there. Again, love it for Arizona. For Arenado, obviously, he felt like his time in St. Louis was through. Obviously, they are in a rebuilding phase. They traded away Nolan Arenado. They traded away Sonny Gray. To be honest with you, they're like the Twins in my mind. Like I mentioned that, but who can you really name here? Obviously there's some names there: Brandon Donovan, Mason Wynn, Lars Nootbaar, Nolan Gorman, Jordan Walker. There's names that you know, but no one's really clicked. At the same time, I feel like their entire lineup is made up of guys who are under 28 who haven't been able to fully break out with the Cardinals. These were the guys that were supposed to supplement the Nolan Arenado and the Paul Goldschmidt of the Cardinals back in 22 and 23. And they couldn't get more than one guy firing at once. So now they're just stuck with all these guys who are supposed to help the core. And now you've traded away the core. I mean, the rotation is led by Dustin May, who they signed out of free agency this year. I don't know who else is there without Sonny Gray, without Miles Mikolas there. So, I mean, if you're a Cardinals fan, you're in a tough spot. I think, again, you're trying to fight out of fifth this year. I mean, the Pirates, with the backs of Paul Skeens and what they were able to do, the Reds, they were a postseason team, the Cubs, Brewers. For me, the Cardinals are fifth place team, and they're kind of on the backs of becoming a Rockies White Sox. They're going to go through a little bit of a rebuild here. Credit where credit's due for them realizing that, they got to take a step back to rework their team a little bit, instead of just holding on to Sonny Gray and holding on to Arenado and trying to pretend like they can compete. They make the smart plays here by just dumping off salary, working on, trying to get some draft picks for them and see where they can end up in a couple of years. So for the Cardinals aspect of it, it is painful to walk away from an era, but I think everyone knew that they weren't going to be making any plays this year, many. So for their aspect, credit where credit's due for them realizing and being able to walk away. So yeah, let's continue on here with more news because the episode will continue to run long if we don't. In all the midst of the Kyle Tucker signing with the Dodgers last night, 3 teams decided to just poke their heads in the mix and be like, hey guys, we're going to do stuff too if you want to pay attention to us. Hey media, look at us for a second. The Rays, Angels, and Reds, while all the news was coming out with Kyle Tucker, they decided to make a 3-team trade here. So I'm going to break it down by move and then talk about the overall aspect just to make it a little bit easier. So the Rays have sent Josh Lau to the Angels. The Reds have sent Gavin Lux to the Rays. The Angels have sent a prospect pitcher, Chris Clark, to the Rays. And the Angels have sent Brock Burke to the Reds. So in general, for the Reds aspect of it, they are trading away Gavin Lux to get Brock Burke. For the Rays, they have traded away Josh Lau to get Gavin Lux and Chris Clark. And for the Angels, they've traded away Brock Burke to get Josh Lau. That is the aspect. That is how everything comes down to play here. The biggest names in this for me are Lau and Lux. Obviously, Burke is another major league pitcher. So Chris Clark, pitching prospect, the only guy we don't really have to talk about in this situation here. Let's go with the Rays aspect first. You're going from an outfielder in Lau to Lux, an infielder. It's going to be the first time since when? It's been a while since the Rays didn't have a Lau or Lowe on their team. I mean, Brandon Lau was the first to come up in 2018 with them. I don't think Nathaniel Lau was up at the time. So Brandon Lowe, he in 2018, so the first time in almost a decade that the Rays will not have an LOWE player on their team. At one point, they had Josh Lowe, Nathaniel Lowe, and Brandon Lau all on the team. Nathaniel Lau, I forget which one's the Lowe and which one's Lau. Josh Lowe, Nathaniel Lowe. I know Josh Lowe and Nathaniel Lowe are brothers, and then Brandon Lau. I think it is Brandon Lau, like now, Josh Lowe, Nathaniel Lowe. I'm pretty sure that's right, but don't quote me because I might be wrong. Anyways, Josh Lowe spent 5 seasons with the Rays. He came up, the younger brother of Nathaniel Lau. He came up in 2021, had a small stint there. 2022, another small stint, and then 2023, last 3 years, he's been there 135, 106, 108 games. His best year was in 2023. He had a 3.7 WAR. He had an 835 OPS with a 292 batting average. The last 2 years haven't been all that great for him, but he's dealt with some injuries at the same time too. Not entirely his fault. He goes to the Angels, who will take up another kind of reclamation project. Like, again, they're doing this thing where they're signing a bunch of guys that they have had really good years, really good 1 or 2 off years, and trying to tap into that potential. They did this kind of with Tim Anderson last year, and it did not work for them. They did it with Yohan Moncada. Kind of worked out a little bit with Moncada. He was a lot better than Tim Anderson was, at least. But, Lau, like I said, only has that one really strong year in 2023. As a whole, his career numbers aren't awful. He's a 250 batting average and a 721 OPS, with 43 home runs, 140 RBIs. He's fast. He's got a decent glove out there in the outfield. I like Josh Lau. Nathaniel Lowe. Yeah, Josh Lowe. So hopefully he's able to continue to figure things out for him and kind of, new team get into a new rhythm. So good for him. The Rays are getting Gavin Lux, who I guess will be replacing Brandon Lau. Of course, the Rays traded Brandon Lau to the Pirates in a different 3-team trade earlier this season, during the offseason. Of course, Lux, most of his career with the Dodgers, had a year where he did not play because of injury. Dodgers traded him in 2024's offseason to start 2025. So last year was his first year as a not Dodger, and he got to play with the Reds and got, for the most part, his biggest sample size ever as a player. Of course, he did get plenty of games with the Dodgers, but also as platooning, also being moved around from second to short to left to right to center, etc. Wherever the Dodgers needed him to play, he was playing. Last year, he was mainly your everyday second baseman, did have a couple appearances at third as well as left field. But it wasn't a great year for Lux as a whole. He had a 269 batting average, a 724 OPS, only had 5 home runs, 53 RBIs, and only had 49 runs. So, he was getting on base a little bit. He had his moments, 120 hits, a career high in that regard. Career high in doubles, 28 doubles. That was kind of where a lot of his slug and his OPS numbers come from here. But in terms of WAR, it was his worst year as a whole, negative 0.2. His defense wasn't all that sharp. But again, it was a new field for him. Now it's going to be a different new field for him going over to Tampa Bay. And we don't even know if Tropicana is going to be ready. I haven't really heard much about that recently, if they're going to be good to go or if they're going to have another season in Steinbrenner. Maybe they start the season in Steinbrenner, end up in Tropicana. Who knows? But regardless, Lux is making his way to his third team in 3 years. Of course, 24 with the Dodgers, 25 with the Reds, and now will be joining the Tampa Bay Rays. The Angels got Low. Nope, the Angels got Lau. The Rays got Lux. And the Reds in all this, they are getting Brock Burke, who is a part of the 2023 Texas Rangers World Series team. He was with Texas for the most part of his career, got traded at the deadline to the Angels in 2024, where he's played with them since. So he played 2024, the rest of that season with the Angels, and then as well as last year. In a 5-year career, he has a 3.88 ERA with 214 games, 8 of which are starts. So, of course, he is a bullpen guy, but has gone through some lengths. 264 career innings with 249 strikeouts, 114 earned runs, 40 home runs, a 21-12 record. Last year with the Angels was very good for him. Probably one of his best years of his career. A 7-1 record. He had a 3.36 ERA through 69 games, 61 innings with 52 strikeouts, only gave up 23 earned runs last year. So a really solid year for him, probably his second best of his career. In 2022 with Texas, he had a 1.97 ERA through 52 appearances there, 82 innings, for him. So he was eating up a lot of innings that year, had a 7-5 record that year. This is definitely a really strong year for Burke. And the Reds, who need to stronghen up their bullpen, continues to do just that. I think the Reds are, kind of really liking their team entering 2026 here. And there's still plenty of free agents available if they want to go and add a decent bat or another arm. So the Reds still being able to do stuff, good for them and good for all these players. New homes, trying to figure things out, continue your careers, and that's the aspect there in all this. Moving on here, we've talked so little about the Yankees this offseason. They really have not done much. Well, ladies and gentlemen, the Red Sox have finally done something. They are trading for Ryan Weathers. Wahoo! I'm sure Yankees fans are over the moon, happy knowing that Tucker's a Dodger and Bichette's a Met and Williams is a Met, and they have signed Ahmed Rosario. Yay. I mean, this has been one of those offseasons for the Yankees to forget. I mean, so many, usual Yankee-type moves that have been made, especially in recent offseasons when they traded for Soto and traded for Williams and all these other things that have happened. I mean, we're talking about a Yankees team that, of course, Bellinger still unsigned. Trent Grisham, they wanted him to leave in free agency. They offered him a qualifying offer. He ends up taking the qualifying offer, so they're stuck with him for $22 million this year. Devin Williams goes to the Mets. Luke Weaver goes to the Mets. Mark Leiter Jr. goes to the Athletics. Paul Goldschmidt's still a free agent, but who knows about him? Same thing with LeMahieu with age there. Blackburn, they re-signed Blackburn. They re-signed Yarbrough, but what's the move here? I mean, they haven't done much. Their team as a whole looks the same. Ryan Weathers, to me, doesn't make that big of a difference in the rotation. They also had to give up quite the prospect haul to do so. including outfielder Brendan Jones, infielder Juan Mathus, infielder Dylan Jaiso, and outfielder Dylan Lewis. So 4 prospects heading over to Miami in exchange for Weathers. And if you're not sure exactly on Ryan Weathers' MO, he started his career with the Padres. That was back in 2021. He got traded in 2023. He went from the Padres to Miami. And since then, with Miami, he has put up decent-ish numbers. When he first got over to Miami, it was a tough start, tough transition, I guess. He only made 3 games. And in 13 innings, gave up 11 earned runs. Then in 2024, kind of figured it out just a little bit. He pitched 16 games, made 16 starts, a 3.63 ERA in 86 innings. Last year, he made 8 appearances, 8 games, 8 starts, a 3.99 ERA, basically a 4 ERA there, giving him 17 earned runs in 38 innings. When you look at his career as a whole through 5 years with the Padres and Marlins, he is 12-23, 70 games, 55 of which were starts, a 4.93 ERA, essentially a 5 ERA guy that cost the Yankees 4 prospects. The best year we've seen him was that 2024 season with Miami, but he hasn't made more than, 16 starts in the season? 18 starts he had with the Padres in 2021, I guess, but he was also out of the bullpen a lot that year as well. So nothing out his baseball reference really jumps up as like, oh, wow, this is a guy that can help you guys. For the Yankees, I mean, you have Max Fried, you have Will Warren, you have Cam Schlittler. Like, I don't know what the deal is with Garrett Cole when he's going to come back. Same thing with Carlos Rodon and Clark Schmidt. For me, Ryan Weathers is a guy that you didn't need. Like, there had to have been someone better. I mean, the 4 prospects they sent over maybe just aren't anything crazy. I don't know. To me, this is something that is very just uncharacteristic of the Yankees. It just didn't need to happen here. So, yeah, that's where we're at in all this for the Yankees. They're just kind of waiting to do something here. And I think just as we continue to, we were almost going to be able to wrap up this episode here. I think we have some breaking news right now coming out of Philly camp. I think the continuation of these, you just missed out on this free agent, now we're going to transfer over to someone else. I think that continues here. It looks like with the Bichette moving to the Mets and Phillies missing on him, the Phillies have gone out to retain JT Realmuto. It appears that JT Realmuto is sticking with the Phillies here. I'm just trying to pull up some stuff here just to have something to talk about here instead of having to wait to talk about it on the next episode on Monday here. But it looks like the Phillies and JT Realmuto have reached an agreement to place. It's $45 million guaranteed over the next 3 years, with incentives of up to $5 million. Says Bob Nightingale of USA Today. So yeah, that is what we have here in terms of some of the specifics of all of this here. JT Realmuto is staying with Philly. So hey, Philly fans, I said that it sucks that you guys lost out on Suarez, or you're losing Suarez, and now you've lost out on Bo. This is a good sign. Realmuto, of course, not the catcher that he once was, the 3-time All-Star, 3-time Silver Slugger, 2-time Gold Glove winner as well. When he first came over from Miami, I mean, he was everything. 4.5 WAR that year in 2019 with 25 home runs. Since that year, though, it hasn't been anything crazy. He had a very strong 2022 where he finished 7th in MVP voting, winning a Gold Glove and Silver Slugger that year, and 820 OPS. Last year with Philly, played in 134 games, 129 hits, only hit 12 home runs, a 257 batting average, and a 700 OPS. The OPS is some of his worst besides his first 2 years with Miami in 2014 and 2015. But Realmuto, at one point in his career, was viewed as the best catcher in baseball. It was the likes of his ability to hit, but also ability to run. He was one of the best when it came to running the bases as a catcher. He spent 12 years total in his career, 38.7 WAR. He has 180 home runs, a career 270 batting average, and a career OPS of 774. It's great stuff. I think, yes, you get a little bit hesitant on the way his season ended last year, but his defensively, he's still top notch. I think he's obviously, as more and more catchers have come up, some of these young guys who've really broken into themselves a little bit more, guys like William Contreras, guys even like Shea Langoliers. He isn't that top catcher that he once was, but I'd still put him top 10, maybe even top 5, depending on the season that he can have here. But yeah, Realmuto, 3 years. I think Phillies, you like it as well because it kind of keeps your pitchers in check instead of having to sign a new catcher and there's a whole new battery and all of your pitchers need to figure out new things. You keep the catcher who knows the pitchers well. You don't have to change up too much about it. I think that's going to help in the long run here for Philly. It's one of those things that it seems minor, but it does make a difference, especially in the clubhouse. I'm sure Realmuto is a clubhouse guy. I'm sure, the likes of Harper and Turner and, all those guys are happy to see him back and to have him back with the Phillies organization here. Obviously, again, it is some bittersweet stuff going from the Bichette news and all this to now signing Realmuto, who had a really tough year last year. Still, it wasn't bad. But when you go back in his previous years with Philly, it definitely was his worst year with Philly if you exclude COVID. He wasn't great during COVID, but in terms of a full season, Realmuto was definitely the worst year with the Phillies that he had last year. But there's definitely a lot of bounce back potential for Realmuto. So really happy for him, really happy for the Phillies to have a win in all of this. There were a couple teams that kind of just seemed like they were losers this episode. It's nice for the Phillies to have something to hold on to here. A little bit of breaking news there, but this brings us to the final news of the episode, which in hindsight now, this seems like nothing. Who cares about this? But let me tell you, Willi Castro is still a dog, and he is signing a 2-year deal with the Colorado Rockies. I mean, it's a little funny because this is news that any other episode, any other day of the offseason, we're talking about this kind of in length here. In an episode like this, we're just kind of scrolling over it. I mean, the guy finished 4th in Rookie of the Year voting with Detroit. From there, he spent a couple years with Minnesota. He had an all-star year with Minnesota in 2024. He had a really strong year that year. His whole Minnesota Twins tenure had been pretty strong. Since 2023, in the 2.5 seasons, really, he had an all-star appearance. He had a 733 OPS, a 335 batting average, and 31 home runs through, 368 games. So, pretty impressive stuff there for Minnesota. The Twins, in their dumpster fire sale, traded him to the Cubs in 2025 last year to finish off the season. And he was part of nothing. He didn't really contribute much to the Cubs. In 34 games, he had 17 hits, had 1 home run, 1 triple, drove in 6 RBIs. He had a 170 batting average and a 485 OPS. So his numbers fell off hard going from Minnesota to Chicago, which isn't the craziest difference. They're both central teams. They're probably, 2 hours away from each other? Not even, an hour and a half, an hour. So it wasn't the craziest difference there for Willi Castro. But yeah, I think his, for the Rockies to come in and get a 2-year contract, I mean, that's pretty good. It's a $12.8 million deal for him in the 2 years, so an AAV of 6.4 for each year here. You get a switch hitter, you get a kind of known MLB player. So if you're the Rockies, I mean, you take whatever you can get. One-time All-Star, everything is all nifty dandy there for the Rockies. So happy for Colorado for doing something. Happy for Willi Castro, for finding a little home for the next 2 years, getting to go to Colorado. And, sucks that his episode came with the likes of all this other stuff that happened, because this has been the craziest episode of the offseason. And I think it's only going to get, well, it's not going to get crazier because, again, we had Kyle Tucker go, we had Bichette go. So there were a lot of moves that happened to kind of help us get through this offseason, but it's definitely going to start speeding things up here as we end this episode here. Like I said, an hour long. So many signings, so many moves, an absolute crazy week of the offseason. And it's only going to set up some more stuff down the road here. Bellinger, think of guys like Zach Gallen, Lucas Giolito. I would say Bellinger and Framber Valdez are now like the top two guys to go and get. If you need a starter, go get Framber. I think Baltimore should be putting all in on Framber. They need to go get a starter right now. And I don't know if landing on Zach Gallen or Lucas Giolito or Chris Bassett, I'm not sure where Baltimore's direction is going. Framber Valdez, Cody Bellinger, those are like the next two big guys to sign here, and I'm assuming they probably will over the next little bit here. But again, an absolute crazy week, an absolute crazy episode. If you've been with me through this entire hour-long episode, I appreciate you so much. Send some love out there to fans of the teams that lose this episode. Teams like the Yankees, teams like the Blue Jays, teams like the Cardinals even. Like, it's definitely tough for some teams here. Bichette is a Met. Kyle Tucker is a Dodger. Ranger Suarez is a Red Sox. Arenado a Diamondback. Like, a lot happened this week. A lot of big news. And I am so tired of talking about it all, especially the Bichette stuff. Listen, ladies and gentlemen, again, thank you so much. I appreciate you all for tuning in to today's episode. It's crazy stuff, and it's only going to get crazier. So yeah, thank you, everybody, so much, and I will see you next time.